Bitcoin and crypto is crashing in a huge way in the last few days. How much worse can it get realistically? Is this the end of crypto? Is Bitcoin dead? What is going on in the markets? Welcome to AR7 channel, everyone. Every Wednesday I'm making market updates on Bitcoin and crypto, and we're learning what can happen next. Now, if you haven't already subscribed and liked, this is a perfect time to do so, because in the last video we've made in just 1 week ago, you can see that we've outlined 3 scenarios, and we already discussed that this scenario was unlikely. The 25K was the bottom, and now we're already in the scenario 2 to 3 options that we're gonna discuss even more in depth today. So welcome once again everyone to AR7, and let's start our analysis for today. Obviously, as always, we're starting with Bitcoin because, as we said, this is the king of crypto, and this is the main cryptocurrency that is really affecting that what everybody else will do. So before we go to Ethereum and Solana, we're starting with Bitcoin here. Now, the very first thing that we want to start with, guys, is that, as we said, so this wasn't the bottom just a week ago, and we crashed all the way to 20K in the last few, today and yesterday. And I want to start from the really important kind of thing that, as you can see, guys, actually historically the bottom for Bitcoin was this level here, the 200 week moving average before. Okay, so you can see that this was the bottom of the bear market in 2018, and then the COVID crash reached these levels, and even way back in 2015 these were also the bear market bottom kind of area for all the bear markets that Bitcoin had so far. So I just want to mention, really, the first thing here is that we very likely could be around the bottom for Bitcoin. It's very early to really say that because the macro general stuff is really not really unusual. So I'm gonna discuss the worst case scenario, why I think it's also possible, but now we're gonna start with the more decent case scenario that we now are around the bottom. Either 20K was the bottom or something close, or I guess more importantly in time wise, like within the next 1 to 2 weeks, this could be the bottom for the market cycle for Bitcoin, but it's very early to say that. So please don't, non-financial advice as always, guys, but please remember, this is all in probabilities, okay? We can't know that for sure, but there's a decent possibility the bottom is pretty close here. We're gonna be around the area of 20K. So as you guys saw, that was scenario number 1. Okay, now let's continue to the scenario number 2, which could be slightly worse. And actually I want to discuss, guys, now the next levels that I think are more likely for Bitcoin than bottoming here at 20K. Because first of all, guys, if you can see, like in the COVID situation, we actually dropped here to this pink line. Okay, so we have the blue line and the pink line. Now, why the pink one is kind of even more interesting to me is because the pink one is actually the 300 moving average, a simple moving average. And why is that also super important, guys? Because first of all, it's a really long-term moving average, and second, we've actually touched this moving average only once in all of Bitcoin's history. Okay, and that happened in this COVID week that we in March 2020, that we went to $3,800. Now what I want to mention is that over here also the equities market was really bearish. Okay, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys remember the COVID March 2020 were pretty crazy times in many aspects. So because the equities are bearish again, and because everything is so bearish right now, I think touching again the 300 week moving average, which is currently sitting at $16.5K, I think for me personally, the way I see it, that is the most probable Bitcoin bottom. Okay, again, we'll have to live life and see what happens next, but the way I personally see it, this is the most probable at this point in time, that we're gonna touch again this area of the 300 moving average, 300 weekly moving average, and then we'll have to see what happens. Like, if we're starting to get to 16K, I'm really gonna be laser eyed and focused on what's gonna happen even on the short term, but normally I analyze the longer terms because that's much easier to really understand what's going on. So guys, to sum it up real quick, so best case scenario is we are now around the bottom, okay? The 200-week moving average, which was the bottom, as we've mentioned, in the history of Bitcoin before. The 300-week moving average is, in my opinion, a little bit more likely scenario than the 200-week. Now, guys, I want to discuss even a slightly worst case scenario than even dropping below the 16K level. But I want to say this one is actually also, in my opinion, less likely. Okay, so let's put it like this. The 16K, in my opinion, the relatively most likely, and then the 20K or below the 16K is the least likely scenarios, the way I personally see it. Now, I just want to discuss, go back to equities, guys. Why do I think still a worst case scenario is still a possibility? And the next thing, guys, please pay attention here. And again, subscribe and like if you haven't already, because it's going to be a really important thing right now. Something that many people kind of in the crypto world especially are kind of not looking at it all the time is that basically since Bitcoin really exists, we didn't really have some serious bear markets in equities, okay? So this was the last bear market in equities, that was 2008. And Bitcoin was basically created kind of as a response to this, the financial crisis that we've had back then. And as you can see, we didn't really have any major bear market since then, okay? The last ones were 2001 and 2008. And I'm showing specifically NASDAQ because Bitcoin is correlated to the NASDAQ even more. So the NASDAQ is even more important to us. So, guys, over here in Bitcoin, we've discussed, as we said, the 200-week moving average, okay? And for NASDAQ, as you can see, that's actually also a really, really major area. And as you can see, when we were dropping below the 200-weekly moving average in NASDAQ's history, that like we've had so much more downside ahead. That was one time in the dot-com bubble that we've had in 2001. And the second time was here in 2008. And also, look, guys, how quickly it escalates. You know, like, I mean, the bear market already started here from October 2007 and 2008. But look how quickly things escalate once NASDAQ broke this important, really, really major 200-week moving average, okay? And then it dropped by another, let's see here briefly. So from here to here, that was another 38% drop for the NASDAQ. And overall, I think if I remember correctly, it was like a 60% or something of a drop. Yeah, 54, 55. So guys, really important thing here is that once NASDAQ recovered, okay, so it started recovering in 2009 and it gave a touch. It held it as support here in 2010, the 200 weekly moving average. And ever since, guys, we've just had a crazy, crazy decade-long bull market for the equities, which was absolutely fantastic, of course, for everyone who was involved. But like, look at this, guys. Even in the COVID dump, we reached relatively close to this area, but we didn't really touch it. And also here another, by the way, this is actually also was the Bitcoin bottom. So you can see some people say that Bitcoin is not correlated to the NASDAQ. Heck no, it's very correlated. This was the bottom of Bitcoin and NASDAQ was bearish here. This was also super crazy times for Bitcoin and look what happened to NASDAQ. But these two weren't major bear markets, you see, because it was pretty quick. That was from October to December, only 2 months. And that was a V-shaped recovery here, you know, February, March, April, almost everything was recovered. May, June is when it recovered, you know, so it wasn't a bear market. This wasn't a bear market, but this was a bear market, okay, because this was a year long. This was even like 2-3 years long. So these are bear markets and these two were not. And as we said, we didn't reach the 200 week. So guys, now I'm talking really about the worst case scenario for crypto and for equities and in general for anybody who's involved in markets. But guys, it's very possible because in NASDAQ and in NASDAQ specifically, we didn't even touch the 200 week for so long. And you see gravity kind of does its things eventually. And you see even in this 90s major bull run that NASDAQ had, eventually it broke. Okay, and then again in 2008. So I just want to say, obviously NASDAQ may even not reach there, but it also definitely can reach. Maybe it can hold it as support, and that will be very bullish, of course, if NASDAQ is able to hold it as support and be back to new all-time highs later. But if we break it below, guys, as you've seen before, obviously it can still be a fake out because anything is possible in markets. But as we've seen before, once it breaks, look how quickly it escalates. Okay, over here from February 2001 until October 2002, there was another like year and a half of bear market. Over here the bottom was actually much closer, but still you can see how much further it dropped from there. So yeah guys, if this happens to equities, please, I know many crypto people are kind of don't understand it, some of them, but it's really, really major. If NASDAQ drops below the 200 weekly moving average of its own and the 300, it's going to be very bad for Bitcoin and crypto. And yes, honestly, if it does happen for NASDAQ, I think it's very possible that Bitcoin will even drop below its historical 300 weekly moving average. And yes, it could be like the really worst case scenario that Bitcoin may even get to 12K or 11K or something like that. But again, I watch the equities as well to really gauge and understand if that's possible for Bitcoin. So guys, that was for Bitcoin. Now let's get now, as we understand what happened with Bitcoin, guys, now let's have a look what could happen with Ethereum instead, our second largest cryptocurrency, which is also bleeding quite extensively lately. So with Ethereum, guys, because Ethereum is strongly correlated to Bitcoin, I watch actually Ethereum Bitcoin pair much more closely, and I'm gonna show it in a minute. But for USD, I guess I still want to show that, let's remove actually these two here. For Ethereum, I want to show that at least historically for USD valuations, it looks like we've had really major levels like at the just below 1,000, 970, and then the 500 to 400 were also really, really major levels for Ethereum, because you can see like in the really big bull run that Ethereum had in 2017, it had a lot of resistance at this level, and then it broke it, held it as support, made an all-time high. Then again, look at it was a local bottom here, and then once it broke it, it was, you see, it was really major. Like when Ethereum broke the 400 to below, it just stayed there for so long, you know. And then over here again, it found resistance and broke above. So again, I don't know if we're gonna get there, because again, we're strongly dependent on Bitcoin and on NASDAQ. But if we do start to get with Ethereum to like the 700, 800, 600 area, $400 to $500 is gonna be really, really major. And I'm gonna watch these levels really closely. But the really more important one that I want to show you guys is the Ether Bitcoin situation here. And guys, if you can recognize this pattern, this is actually a Wyckoff distribution pattern that was very similar to Bitcoin in early 2021. And this was much more elongated because it took like a year. And look guys, it definitely looks like this Wyckoff is kind of over. And according to previous Wyckoff distributions events, Ethereum Bitcoin valuation, I'm personally expecting it to drop to 0.3 or maybe 0.03 to 0.4, something like that. 0.3 I guess the most likely. And that's why it's still strongly dependent on just what the price of Bitcoin would be, and then what the price of Ether will be in comparison to USD. So I'm just gonna say that when it comes like to the technical analysis and to important levels, I think Ether to Bitcoin valuation is much more important to watch than Ether USD, because Ether USD can just really do almost everything kind of imaginable, unfortunately now to the downside, of course. Yes, so lastly guys, because I have a strong community with Solana here, so I want to also discuss Solana, guys. So actually with Solana, even though again it's an altcoin and it can definitely very easily bleed again against Bitcoin, and in the last video actually I've made about Solana predictions, non-financial advice as always, we discussed what are the possible levels for Solana. So first of all, I just want to say that I actually really like that Solana is holding this level so far. This horizontal line of 28, I drew it just like about a month ago when Solana dropped over here, just because I saw the big volumes that we've had before that, and actually maybe on the daily we can see it a little bit better. But anyway, we've had a lot of volume around this area at 28, and you can see we almost never really spent a lot of time under 28 once we broke it, and it was also a pretty strong resistance here in April 2021. So bottom line is just in the short term, I do like that Solana holds pretty well around this area of 28. I still think it can easily get to the lower 20s next if Bitcoin drops even further. But just in the short term, it's a really good sign for me personally. And you can even see today, like, look, Bitcoin is down almost 4%, Ethereum is 8%, crazy. And look, Solana is almost, you know, it's almost flat from all of these assets that I have here. Solana actually specifically today holds the best. So I just wanted to mention that it's really a good sign, especially as we discussed recently, that Solana has a lot of fundamental issues that they keep going offline. So it shows that the market still has a lot of faith in Solana, even at these difficult times. So that's really, really good sign. But again, we'll have to check later. And I mean, in case you're wondering, I'm not buying here at all, because as I've mentioned many times, Bitcoin is the king, and Bitcoin and then the equities are another kings right now. That's also really important, that they are the main two that I'm watching to give me confidence when can I be back more strongly into the market. So guys, that was the really important major update. So as we've said, crypto is crashing right now. It's difficult times, but now is the time to just relax and just watch what's going on, not go all in. Just learn and educate yourself on what are the best projects right now, and what projects are also holding well today, like Solana. Yes guys, so if you have any questions, if you're new here, again, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, because I'm gonna be here every single Wednesday on really critical market updates, and if needed I can make even more market updates. If you have any questions in the comments you want to ask that I didn't cover yet, let me know guys. I'm gonna be very happy to help anyone who has questions. So again, thank you very much for joining AR7 channel once again. It was my pleasure discussing all of that today. So yeah guys, thank you very much. I love you all, and cheers.